On the way next, we are talking about a tricky balancing act, evolving versus preserving company culture. Should companies adapt to stay relevant or protect tradition to maintain success? We've got a big panel on the way for you next. Let me introduce you to our speakers. We have Vivek George Matthew, former Chief Culture and Capability Officer, Chief Operations Officer at Yum; Simon King, Vice President Al Shaya; Hisham Al Gurg, CEO Seed Group and Managing Director Jollibee UAE; George Kanapali, Managing Director Nando's UAE; Faisal Yunus, CEO of Global Catering Services; and our esteemed moderator for this panel is going to be none other than the wonderful Minnie Jacob, co-founder of Oddbox and founder of FFCC. Let's give all our panelists a nice warm welcome this morning.
Thank you so much, Emma, for that introduction, and thank you for all of you and my amazing panelists who are there. So today we are here to talk about a topic which I think sits at the heart of any successful restaurant brand, right? It is, what else? We're talking about company culture, and it is something that can be a biggest asset for a successful restaurant. It makes a difference to your employee loyalty and the customer engagement, all of it, right? But of course, with the markets evolving and the consumer expectations evolving, there's always a tie that the leaders have to face, whether you move on along and adapt the culture to things as you move along, or should you hold on to your culture and maintain the traditional culture that you have and maintain the consistency. So I have my panelists here today to answer questions for us. So let's hear it. Let's dive deep straight in, and we'll start with you, Hisham. So could you describe any one core value that defines your brand's culture, and how has that value influenced your daily operations success or your long-term success?
Can we have the mic? So, good morning, everyone. At Jollibee, as you know, it's a Filipino-born brand. And with the Philippine, family is very important. If you travel to the Philippines and see some of the commercials of Jollibee, you will see family always definitely involved in that commercial. And usually they run for 2 to 3 minutes. These are long commercials. But since at a very young age, most Filipinos' kids are associated with the Jollibee brand. So when it came to the UAE, we tried to preserve the same core value of family, the spirit of family and fun into our stores as well. Obviously, it's difficult for management to interact daily with customers. So what we try to do is treat our staff as family, and in turn, they treat our customers as family. So when they come into the store, they treat them just as someone would welcome a family member into their homes. From the greeting, from the way we serve the food, the quality of the food, the things that they ask for. And most importantly, the way we treat our staff, we want them to feel members, not just of a restaurant family, but as brothers and sisters as well. When it comes to our decisions, we always look at our core value. Are our decisions aligned with our family values when it comes to disciplining staff or promoting them or correcting them? So we always go back to the core value of family in all of our decisions, and it makes us aligned with every decision we make, pretty much.
Lovely. That's nice. That feeling of warmth comes in, I guess, with focusing on family. So I'm going to skip one more and go to Simon. So in this industry, in the restaurant industry, where customer preferences and the competitive pressures keep evolving, how do you decide what do you hold on to? What do you, keep instead of moving, changing?
Minnie, thanks for inviting me. Yeah, it's really interesting. I think trends are exactly that. They're trends. They happen on occasion. And the core culture of the business is really important that we maintain that from throughout. So evolution tends to go with trends. And there's lots of examples of brands in the past that have hooked onto trends and then forgotten their core identity and the core culture behind them. A great example of that is many years ago, people remember that dynamite shrimp craze. And I remember going to a pizza brand and having a pizza with a dynamite shrimp. Ultimately, that's a trend that should never happen, baking a dynamite shrimp on a pizza. The core culture of the business is really important that we maintain that and make sure that it continues to live throughout any trend changes that may occur. And the culture comes from the right intentions rather than changing with market expectations. So maintaining that core culture is so important.
Going on to Faisal. So how do you balance the need to stay relevant in the market with the risk of losing your brand identity? I mean, it changes, right? When you change culture and all, there is a chance of losing your brand identity. So are there any key indicators that you look out for?
That's a very interesting question. I had the opportunity to manage international change such as Starbucks, Paul. And one thing, I think every brand that wants to balance how to stay relevant in a market and how to maintain its core essence should go through 3 steps. The first important step is to define the core essence, the core values of this particular brand. What does it stand for? How impactful it is? And that's very important. On the other hand, the consumer also plays a very important role. Is why is the consumer loyal to that particular brand? So once you define this particular aspect, you're defining your DNA. And it's so important, which brings me to the second step. So once you define your DNA, the second step is how do you adapt around this DNA? Because you should never touch a DNA of the brands once you define it well. So the adaptation could go through technology, the adaptation could go through menu innovation, so on and so forth. That's the second step. The third step is intelligence. You need to collect a lot of market intelligence, competitive intelligence, data points to strengthen the brand. Back to your second questions on the key indicators, definitely financial performance of the brands, your top line, your bottom line.
Of course.
Definitely. And 2, how engaging are the consumers on your social platform? This is an important indicator also for the health of any brand that operates here in the region.
Right. Moving on to you, George. We were talking earlier outside, but we would like to share with the audience as well. What are the biggest risks of not having a clearly defined company culture?
I think at Nando's, all our brand values, if you look at it, whether it's pride and passion and integrity and courage, we expect all our stakeholders to live by it. And the absence of a value system, what do you mean by culture? For us, it's a value system. It's a set of values that helps all stakeholders identify with you, relate to you, aspire to accept it, and to embody it. So if you don't have that, then you are not having a point of differentiation. You are forsaking your identity. And for us, culture is an internal operating system. It's the currency of the business. And all our brand touch points live it. And the culture is not just about your employees or your external stakeholders. It's about being able to walk into our restaurant and know it is Nando's even if you don't see the signage. That means our culture becomes a 360 experience.
Right. So it's so we set the context and say that there is the need to establish a good culture. So,
certainly.
Vivek, moving on to you. In your view, what are the specific cultural values that drive long-term success for a restaurant brand? And do you think these differ from other industries?
Okay. I'll have to set a little bit of a context, and then the answer will become more clearer. So what is culture? Culture is essentially common processes, acts, traditions, which a common set of people use. Where does this thing come from, and why is this important for an organization? Organizations have got values, and values are deep-seated. And those values help you figure out what your hard lines are, what you don't want to cross.
Right.
Culture helps you articulated well for the employees. It's a two-way street. So the person who architects the culture needs to be able to articulate it well. The employee should be able to embrace it and do it again and again. Why is the culture important? Helps you with your values. The second thing, it helps the organization have a competitive difference.
Right.
So if your culture is not going to help you with creating a competitive difference, it is useless. So yes, our businesses require a culture that help you get into a competitive difference. In a restaurant space, what do we need to do? Bottom line, if it is one thing that you want to bring it out to, is a motivated employee. Yes. What kind of a motivated employee? There are two kinds of motivation. One is an extrinsic motivation, which is carrot and stick. The other is intrinsic motivation, something that comes from within. So to answer your point, we need culture to drive intrinsic motivation, where an employee wants to do what's right from a cultural standpoint, not just when people are looking, when people are not looking. And it's in the veins of the, it's in the veins of the organization, veins of the employee.
Right.
That's my
so like
answer.
I said, it sits in the heart of any successful restaurant brand, I think. The whole thing of culture. It is the foundation that you have to lay out right from the start. And as you move along, Hisham, you had mentioned that you are more for adapting with time, right? So have you adapted any elements of your culture in the recent past? Can you share any specific example of a change that had a positive impact on the business because of that?
You know, with changing times, you have to continue to evolve and adapt. And as our previous speaker said from Angora, COVID had a huge impact on how do you adapt a family-oriented dining restaurant to a delivery business.
Yeah.
So how do you still allow the customer to feel that this is a family experience when you don't see them, when they don't come to your store? So what we try to do is obviously communicate more with the customers by increasing the channel of communication, whether through our advertising or whether it's through our leaflets that we put inside the bag when we deliver it. And sometimes we get excited when a customer complains because it's a chance for us to also communicate with them.
Oh, lovely. That's a good way of looking at it.
And we've established, actually, which we didn't have before when we started the business, a dedicated customer service department that its core objective is to encourage people to give feedback. A lot of companies, don't want to welcome complaints. We seek for them. And the core objective of our customer service is to find more channels of communication with that customer. So what we try to do always is convert a delivery customer to a dining customer, because we want them to come and enjoy the experience of family and fun inside the store. We were talking to our marketing director yesterday on how do we make our QSR business different than competitors. And we have a very good asset, which, to be honest, we're not utilizing much, which is our Happy Bee mascot. If you've been to a Jollibee store and you got lucky to see a mascot of Jollibee, you'll hear music, you'll hear dancing, and it's not something you would expect in a QSR restaurant, but you definitely see it in Jollibee. So COVID had actually pushed us to adapt, and now we're trying to bring in the customer back to the store, which continues to be a challenge based on the trends that you just saw, as customers continue to prefer to eat at home, especially during the week. But on the weekends, we see more dining customers.
Nice, that's nice. But I love the way you put the complaints that come and how you communicate with the customer, because I think that is a good way of looking at negative feedback and actually considering it as something that you can communicate with the customer with. Simon, you believe in preserving core cultural elements while also evolving when necessary, as and when necessary. So how do you differentiate what's essential to keep from what you're ready to change?
I think what's really important is that the best brands in the industry come from a starting point of a strong culture within. Everyone understands the direction, everyone understands what it is we're trying to achieve. And it's a philosophy rather than a list of instructions. It's intentions, etc. And when I start working with brands that are generally older in the business, I've worked with brands that are 40, 50 years old. What you tend to find sometimes is they lose their path along the way. There's been a sale, there's been a change of leadership, there's a, let's start selling ice cream in this part of the business, and we lose that level of culture. And all those unintentional consequences erode the values of the brand in between. If you go back to the core from 40, 50 years ago, you'll discover what the core culture was, and it's never changed. Ultimately, what we do today is the same as what we did 50 years ago. We create experiences, we create an environment where the guests can enjoy what they've come to see across the board. It's not different anywhere. And if you get back to that core culture, you'll find that that brand that is successful and 50 years old now still has that core right intentions. And that's why I think it's really important that we maintain that throughout. And our responsibility as leaders is to maintain that level of culture. I understand why it happens and why they end up being in a different situation. It's very easy to sit here 50 years later and criticize. But that core culture generally is at the core of that business. And trying to get back to that level is so important. Trends, as I said earlier, that's what happens in the marketplace. You don't have to switch with every trend that comes. If it's not right for your brand, then make sure that you understand, okay, that's not something that I'm going to get involved in. Good luck to you guys that are doing that, but not necessarily something that I think is right for that brand. But as I say, getting back to the core culture, maintain that core culture, you can make the right decisions then based on those trends.
Right.
Can I add to what Simon
sure.
said? So whenever we evaluate a trend which is in the market, whether we want to implement it or go live with it, there are two questions that we ask ourselves. One is, does it enhance the customer experience? Two is, does it improve operating efficiency? And I can give you an example. Like, there was a time when meat alternatives was a big deal. And let's face it, Nando's is an only chicken business. It's a chicken first, it's an only chicken business. And we had strong push to get into that meat alternative space. And what we noticed by talking to our customers, listening to our employees was, we have people coming into our restaurant in groups where a couple of them are staunch vegetarians. And we would rather focus on having a dedicated vegetarian menu than hop onto the meat alternative where we would think that we could sell a product that smells and tastes like our core product to a non-chicken audience. Okay. Today, the dedicated veg menu is about 7% of our dine-in mix, and it's only growing, something we couldn't have imagined a few years ago. Another element, so we didn't get into the meat alternatives bandwagon. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but there's something called pay at the table, which is catching up pretty soon. And for us, again, it answered yes to the two critical questions. We saw that our customers are very comfortable talking to a waiter or waitress while placing an order, but equally comfortable settling the check and walking out without human intervention. And that was addressing the first part. The second part was, it speeds up the service by about 8 minutes, which means in high traffic locations with limited tables, we could turn around more tables, turn around more transactions, and build on revenue. So speed and service are table stakes in the hospitality business, and especially so in premium casual dining. So every trend we evaluate on these two critical metrics. And if the answer is yes, then we take it forward.
Oh, fair enough. That's interesting. But whenever you want to change anything, you have to take your employees along, right? So Faisal, probably you could tell us, how do you take your employees along and keep up get them to agree and accept?
Yeah. Actually, this is a very good question. Currently, we're going through cultural change. And I think my colleagues here, some of my colleagues will vouch for that. Cultural change is not easy. It's challenging on one side. On the other side, it's very necessary for any given company. Usually, what you need to start with, and this is what we've done in our current company, we've defined the vision for this cultural change? What's in it for the employees? What's in it for the organization? What's in it for the different stakeholders? So once you define the vision for this change process, you need to communicate this particular change process, the cultural change. And it has to always be two-way communication. And there are many channels for you to communicate. You need to communicate openly, you need to communicate it consistently. And there are different channels like town halls, which we've done, like focus groups, like executive committees, even going to the restaurants and speaking with each and every staff about this cultural change. Because remember, it has to be a two-way communication. Once you communicate it, this is where you need to start leading by example. You cannot advocate a culture without you as the CEO or as a leadership team to lead by example. Why? Because once you communicate this culture, you're under the microscope immediately. Everyone in this company is looking at you, looking at your behavior, looking at each and every word you discuss, and it has to reflect the culture you're trying to change. So leading by example is very important. So those are 3 ways how you can change your culture within a given company.
Yeah, but how do you manage the employee concerns if there are any? I mean,
you need to bring them in, exactly. During focus groups, when I said it's a two-way communication, you need to listen. It cannot start, it starts from you, but you have to listen to each and every employee within the company. What can they bring to this culture change?
Yeah.
And this happens across different channels like focus groups, like one-on-one meetings, so on and so forth. This is how important it is to engage every employee within any cultural change.
Right. I think listening is the key there.
Exactly.
Right? Vivek, coming from a background of, being the culture officer for a big brand, if you had to choose between prioritizing maintaining a employee culture or adapting to meet a customer demand like George was just talking about. So what would you do? How do you think leaders should decide on this?
It's a tricky one, but here's my point of view. If you have sought out your culture and you've done a good job on it, you don't need to make tectonic changes to it. If you need to make tectonic changes to it, there are one of two possibilities. A, you haven't articulated your culture, people don't understand the culture, that's why you need to change it. 2, you probably have to change your business model because it's a different business that you're in. But having said that, culture doesn't exist for an organization. The culture is there to help an organization succeed.
Yeah.
Organization will always have new environments, and that's where the culture doesn't need to change. It needs to evolve. And that's where leaders need to help bring clarity to people to understand how do we embrace it, how do we see the benefit of it, and how do they bring this into their lives of what they need to do in their transactions.
So, but then if you have to decide between going with a trend with, the customer's expectations or some food trend, how do you
So
take
that's
a
why
call
I'm
on
saying
that?
that it's going to be an evolution. See, consumer wants to pay and he wants to pay fast. Now, if there's a way by which you can pay faster, embrace it, you evolve it, but you're not going to change it culturally. It means you're not going to change the culture because that's more fundamental.
Right.
So you're going to embrace the trends, but not necessarily change a huge big thing from a culture standpoint.
I think it's one is not at the cost of the other. What works for the customers can also work for the employees because our employees are also our customers. And your consumers love the brand, respect the brand, identify with the brand, identify with the values of the brand, and that's why they are your repeat customers. So we have a philosophy that what is good for our people and for our consumers has to be certainly good for the business. So if it hurts one constituent, then it's probably wrong. And we relook at it. And until today, most of our key initiatives have ticked those 2 boxes. And there are additional boxes in terms of, is it good for our external stakeholders, whether they are our vendors or our regulators or landlords or other service providers. It can't be hurting one element in the ecosystem. because all of us need to thrive, and all of us are interdependent. And it comes back to our philosophy of I am because we are, which is a core Nando's philosophy, that we all prosper together and we are invested in each other's wellness and well-being.
Right. Talking of customers, Hisham, do you think customers really care about brand consistency or its ability to stay current? Like, how does it influence your approach to the business?
Well, in F&B, as you know, consistency is very important. But at the same time, following the trends of the market or demands of the customer is as important. What customers expect from a brand, if they are favorite foods that they like, they don't want you to change them. If there's a favorite method of serving the food, of delivering the food, they don't want that to change, obviously. But they also get bored, especially in our market, with the same food served to them all the time. So they want to see new items on the menus at all time. So I think as a brand, you have to identify what do customers want to maintain and what do they want to change. One of the areas that we're adapting change is obviously technology. So we don't compromise on the quality of the food, but we're starting to add what the customer is interested in. Everybody's now on their mobile. So you have to also be on the customer's mobile through the app, through the aggregator platforms. How do you communicate with them? How do you serve them? I think we have to adapt to that. And you saw from the Mangora presentation, more and more restaurants are going into self-ordering kiosks. Jollibee's actually next month is launching the self-ordering kiosks. So does that mean less interaction with the employees? Not really, because we'll still have our employees serving the food and making sure that they're there to provide that customer experience of family in the restaurants.
Right.
So to answer your question, you have to decide, what do I maintain and keep consistent, and what do I change based on demands of the customer and trends?
Okay, nice. Faisal, could you give have you experienced any moment where, adapting to a market trend has strengthened your brand's connection with the customers?
Yes, I can. And this has to be, I think, within technology, I would say. So it's how do you leverage technology and digital ordering today. I'll give an example of one of the brands we have in our portfolio today. We're completely revamping its digital platform. So we're building a whole digital infrastructure, a website. So we're launching a website that's going to be very engaging with the consumer, an online website. We're launching it through e-commerce as we speak. We're launching a loyalty app. So that's very important. This way you can definitely adapt. So when you're within this technology craze, I would say, this is an important way to adapt to the market as we speak. And this is exactly also what Hisham has mentioned. Because what does the consumer want today? I mean, he or she wants a seamless digital experience. So your brand has to be on his mobile, on her mobile, on her laptop, in his living room, in her living room. Your brand has to be everywhere within this digital space today.
Right. So Vivek, if I may ask you, what are the signs that you look for to determine whether a cultural change is worth the risk?
Going back to the way I articulated first, if you've got a proper culture in place, you don't need to have a massive change. You need an evolution of it. Now, if you want to see whether it is really taking into effect, I think disproportionate amount of time needs to be spent in articulating the why you've made that change. Then it comes from within the employee as to say, why is it we are changing? Is it to become more competitive in the workspace? Am I going to be more productive? And people get it. And if you are leading intrinsically motivated employees, you have to articulate the whys. The best assessment is when people can articulate the why. It's not by seeing a poster on the wall, when they can do that. But my personal assessment is when you see people are doing it, that's great. But more importantly, that they're doing it when nobody is watching them.
All right.
That means it's truly and well established. I see Amin Ahmed over here from Coot. We did an exercise in his organization in Kuwait, when we did it for Pizza Hut. And this was specifically aimed at driving intrinsic motivation. But it wasn't a flavor of the wall. It was something that Amin drove right from the top. And it was a 2-year window. And it helps. But his employees would be able to articulate why are we doing things when people are watching them or not.
That's nice.
To add to that, so I think in our case, we have to hire right, because let's accept it, we are a single brand operator. There's always somebody who's paying more, who's able to offer a bigger career graph because they have many brands and many markets, and it's a bigger business. So if you're honest during the hiring process and you don't make tall promises, people join you with a realistic mindset. And in the first 3 months, they already validate everything that you have told them during the hiring process. What you stand for, you could have brochures and pamphlets and websites and awards displayed around your office, but if you can't live up to those promises, however small or big they are, you're going to lose people, you're going to lose morale. And there are no quick fixes. If you are inspiring your employees, and if you are exceeding customer expectations, then culture and servant leadership will take you along the way, a long way. But if you're dropping these crucial balls, however fancy your office is or however good your uniforms are, you're not going to be able to sustain it. And culture is all of this. If you are making false promises during a hiring process, that also is a red flag as far as your organizational culture is concerned.
Yeah.
So be honest from day one.
It's like
And it's much easier to deliver.
It's like in any relationship.
Exactly.
I think, right?
Exactly. It's a long-term relationship. We are not looking at replacing employees every 2 years.
Yeah.
We have 24 restaurant managers. There's only one level above them or two. There are 2 area managers and then there is 1 director of operations. Most of them have been with us for 15 years. So
That says
what
a
am I
lot,
going
yeah.
to promise the restaurant manager who's joining me that in 2 years you're going to be an area manager and in 3 years you'll be director of operations? No. You would probably be able to offer that because you're managing much larger portfolio. But I have to be honest with our team members because that's the only way I can retain them. Not by false promises.
No, absolutely. I think honesty is important, like I said, in any relationship, right? We have a lot of restaurant brands sitting here. So if I were to ask my experienced, esteemed panelists, if any restaurant brand is looking at building or strengthening their culture, the company culture, what is the one piece of advice you would want to bring? It's open, whoever wants to take it.
I would say build a culture of appreciation and recognition. Let this be part of your DNA. I think the gentlemen agree with me that our business is, we're in the people business, we're not in the restaurant business. So it's all about people. So if we manage to build a culture of recognition and appreciation, this would drive your business forward. So this would be one piece of advice from my side.
Thanks, Faisal. Anybody else?
I think ultimately we're responsible to drive our cultures as the leaders of the business. We can't expect our teams to just intrinsically know what it is we want to achieve. Our responsibility is to do that. How do we do that? We listen. Really interesting. Everyone else has said the same thing. But leadership breakfast, talking to the team members, things like that really do make a difference because that's our opportunity to learn in reality. And then it's a simple thank you. If you walk in a restaurant, you see something that's done well, say thank you. Yeah. If that comes from you, I can guarantee you it's going to come from every member in your team. And people saying thank you to each other is probably the best reward you can do. So, you know, that's our responsibility to make sure that we do it. And hopefully our teams will do the same thing.
All right.
Mine is three parts of it. It's three pillars.
I allow that.
And this goes back to how do we create intrinsically motivated employees? Three things, 3 C's. The first one is the employee should be confident. How? By equipping him with the know-how so that he is able to do his job, and where he sees that his tomorrows are going to be better than his yesterdays and todays. That's one. Second is giving him control. And I believe this is very important because it's belief in people. There is no drug that is powerful than an organization backing you. No matter what, you will do what is right for the consumer and the organization. Control. And third one is giving them a sense of community.
Oh, yes.
You don't want to let your community down. So 3 C's that drive intrinsic motivation, and that is absolutely critical in a restaurant industry.
Wonderful. You want to add something, Hisham?
I think one advice I would give anyone in this business, since the gentleman said it's a people's business, so probably one of the most important departments that you should really look at is HR, and how they hire, how they train, and how do they retain the employees. And when we ask a few people in the organization that been there with us for more than, let's say, 10 years, you know, it's not about the salary, definitely, others can pay you more. What kept you here?
Yeah.
And they always say, I like it here, it's the culture. It's the family feeling, that's why I'm here. And we ask, have others offered you more? They say, definitely, but it's the culture is what keeps me here, and that's why I'm staying. So I think these things don't just happen. Your HR department, your leadership have to invest in this. So it doesn't happen by coincidence, it's by design.
Right. George, anything?
I think when, at the end of the day, we want to be sure that as we grow, we don't lose track of the Nando's way, what got us this far. Definitely, we all want to go to the next level without losing track of what brought us this far. So if I have a prayer, that would be that come what may, we still want to be the world's best chicken restaurant, have rock star people with passion and panache, and build restaurants that soak in the Southern African charm, and celebrate a brand with cheekiness and earnestness. And by cheekiness, what I mean is, most of you would have seen our brand communications. It's having fun without being offensive. Is to make a statement without hurting sentiments, but still make a stand and be identified by it. So to add to what Hisham said, employees don't leave us because we have a simple directive to people who hire new employees in our team, and that's to tell them that you are here because you believe in the brand and the business and the values. If you find a candidate who reminds you of your youth, blindly hire them because you can't go wrong there. If somebody across the table reminded you of your youth, hire them. Him, her, hire them. And then we can build a larger, more scalable, more viable, and happy business. And if we can do that happily and with passion and pride, and at the end of the day still leave our offices of our restaurants returning to your other family, we have succeeded.
Yeah.
Because let's face it, most of us spend more amount of time at our workplace than at our homes, and that's everybody in this room, I guess, because we are in the hospitality business. If we feel that we are living one family for the other at the end of the day, I think we have got it right. And most of us have, most of you have, and that's the best part of being here.
Great. Lovely. I think we will leave a few minutes for any questions that anybody has.
Would anyone like to ask a question? Yep.
Hi, my name is Hisham again. So for a brand like Jollibee to establish yourself in a highly competitive market like UAE, how much of money do you think, or percentage of money do you think we should keep aside for promotions exclusively?
Okay.
Second point is, does discounting and all those things that you give with all the delivery platforms, do they should also be considered as a part of this promotion, or that is separate and promotions are separate? How do you see that?
That is quite off the topic. Hisham, it's up to you if you want to take it
I thought he wanted to know what is equity, investment, or enterprise value. I'm like, I'd like to know that too.
I hope our head of finance is not here. So your first question is how much budget or percentage of our business we set aside for promotions. We actually like to reward people before the end of the year, which is surprisingly, most companies want to wait to see whether they're going to make a profit or not. We reward our in-store staff monthly. So whenever they exceed a target, within the same month, we actually, at the end of the month, we reward them by giving them an incentive and commission. This is for the store. For the head office, obviously, we wait till the end of the year. But the reason why we do that is we follow the philosophy of catch people doing something right and reward them instantly. So for us, we don't want to just talk about it, we actually do that. The second thing, what was the second question about my cost? Promotions.
Marketing budget.
Oh, that's a big challenge there. See, we are in a competitive market, QSR definitely. And there's always a struggle and fight between marketing and between R&D and between finance. How much promotion, how much should you bring your price down during a specific promotion? You're talking about price promotion, right?
Yeah.
Does it part of a promotion or is it separate? Should you consider it separate?
You mean promotion of staff or products? Sorry?
For example, you have kept 20% towards promotion of the total budgets, whatever. Does bringing this, after that you get discounts, you give discounts on Talabat, is that also part of promotion, or that is different,
Part of
bringing the customer is
budget
different?
or not?
Actually, when we do promotion with aggregators, it's completely different than we do it in our own store. Because with aggregators, obviously, you got to look at their margin. And then if you're delivering from a shopping center, that's even more margin because they share with you also the turnover rent. So every campaign is different, really. And I'm sure those who are in the business, they have to be extremely careful about the perception of promotion. You don't want to appear like you're a cheap brand with cheap products. You always want to maintain the quality. And you cannot do that if throughout the year you continue to do promotions. I hope that answers your question.
If 20% of your revenue is marketing budget, then you're losing money. You're seriously losing money.
That was an out-of-syllabus question that Hisham answered. But
I don't think
Do we have any
anybody
other
who's in the
questions?
restaurant business can spend 20% on marketing.
Yeah.
we can have one last question, please.
Hello. So a number of you up there are representing multiple brands. You obviously have a corporate culture, I'll call it, and then a brand-driven culture. How do you balance that between to make sure that they both align and synergize?
Who wants to take that?
Are we there? Yeah, it's a really interesting question. I think you're absolutely right. The core culture of the organization versus the individual brand is really important, but it's driven from the parent company effectively, and then each brand has its own different culture within. So what's really important is to have a team in each brand that understands the culture that needs to be driven. And how we do that is make sure that each brand has their own identity. We don't cross mix teams. So if you work within Chipotle, you only work within Chipotle. If you work within Shake Shack, Raising Cane's, etc. So that's how we make sure that we don't lose that culture within the brands. The difficult piece is when people move from one brand to another. And and what's right, the people that are right for brand A may not be right for brand B. So just because you're a great team member in Shake Shack doesn't mean you're necessarily going to be great for Raising Cane's or Chipotle. So what's really important is the brand teams then select those people to make sure they maintain their culture.
And probably I'll add one more thing. It should be part of your due diligence whenever you want to add a new brand on board. So yes, you do your financial due diligence, you do your marketing due diligence, but let's not forget the cultural due diligence piece before you decide on adding any new brand to your brand portfolio.
Exactly.
In order for it to reflect on your bigger picture, which is your company's culture.
And don't forget, we're only custodians of that brand. Ultimately, for all of us, the likelihood of us being in that brand from start to end is unlikely. So we're only custodians of that brand at the moment, and it's really important that you maintain that culture from that.
I'd like to jump in over here. When we were at Yum had a culture called How We Win Together. It had all the tenets. Everybody understood it. But how we win together, it came alive in the brands by the way it was manifested for the brands. So Pizza Hut specifically had something called Life Unboxed. It was speaking from the point of view from a team member to understand and interpret it in terms of the actions which are allowed and not allowed and so on and so forth. So you do have it, and especially when you look at corporate culture, they are more closer to the values. The brand culture, it is the behaviors which get manifested and showcased more.
Thank you, gentlemen. That's right on time, but Hisham, do you want to add something? No, that's... I get the sign, the time's up, and thank you so much for, all the insights that you've given, and hopefully you're all inspired and have got some learnings from this session. Thank you so much.